laid off at peak performance year, that does something to your soul. You could choose to be bitter or you could choose to be better. 14,000 people have just been laid off at Amazon this month. In the last 3 months, it's been 30,000. The headline will never talk about the ones that saw the writing on the wall and created a strategic exit plan. No victory in vague visions. Let's go. I want to bring up a headline, and I try not to go deep in the news. Amazon just announced, listen to the key word, another 14,000 in layoffs. I know what it feels like to be one of those. When my round of layoff hit, I think I was one of 12,000 when I was working in corporate. Now I'm approaching my 5-year post-corporate exodus. However, Amazon just announced 14,000 people that got to figure it out, have figured it out, and that's what we're talking about today. This is a micro event because if I'm looking at, 30,000 roles cut in the last 3 months. Way to give people a new year. Y'all with me? Y'all with me? So the question becomes for those of us that are in corporate, and this conversation is also for those that are in that in-between space. Maybe you've already left corporate. You've made the choice, right? Maybe you've already left and you're looking at what's the next best move. So this conversation, I definitely want to speak to that and be aware of people at that crossroads. For those of you new to me, I am Dre Nicole. I am a corporate exit strategist mentor to my Cape community. And we go deep into the question that I'm asking today. The question is not in this particular age a next, it's a win. It's a win, WHEN, and the readiness. We want to talk about being strategic in this market and this era of growth, innovation, and uncertainty. Now, I was one in my layoff round. I was laid off in the highest performing year of my senior account executive tenure. Isn't that something? The irony. I was laid off at the heel of my highest performing year. How many of you know the more successful you are, the bigger your target gets? Let me know in the chat. How many of you know the more successful you are in your corporate tenure, the bigger your target gets? What are my regional managers, my program directors, my senior account executives, my business development managers? Where you at? All those titles. So today we're talking about a strategic exit and not just necessarily in the space or the job, but how do you transition without losing yourself? Let's be real. For those of you that have been on the live, I like to talk about money because you can't think about vision and have the audacity to think about your big picture if you're worried about the basic necessities. You agree? Y'all agree? You're here and I'm happy you are because that means some of the touch points that we've had, it resonates with you. Today, I want to talk about Bridge Projects. Now, I'm the founder and CEO of Bridge and Land, and we're a workforce strategy agency. We help enterprise level organizations develop a plan to lay off their people ethically, but also let's think about it from the organizational side. Sometimes when a layoff season has to be done, it's not because there's trouble in the water. Sometimes layoffs don't mean trouble in the water, especially for those of us that are tapped into the disruption of AI. Sometimes the layoff signals growth for the organizations. And I've sat on both sides of the table, not only being affected by a layoff, but also having to be the one to conduct the 15-minute Zooms. And if you know, you know. If you know, you know. So being a founder of Bridge and Landing, my ultimate mission is to ensure that the season is done with people first in mind, people first mission, but also for the top performers that the organization has spotted that contributed widely, but the mission of the organization just doesn't fit anymore for what that individual contributes. I'm also adding a layer to boomerang those people back to the organization as a consultant, partner, or supplier. Because that's the beauty of when you have skill sets that transcend past your role or your title. You get to leverage that. That's what we're talking about today. So I'll cover what I call bridge projects. Also, what translate from corporate today. And I want to answer some real questions about timing and positions. If you have any questions, drop them in the comment. I welcome you. Okay. So talking about the timing, positioning, because this isn't theory, ladies and gentlemen. This is happening in real time. Amazon just laid off 14,000 people of the 30,000 in the last 3 months. I'm pulling up my notes here. So let's think about this as a case study. I wonder, because one thing I talk about within my program is reading the room. I wonder, out of the 14,000 that were laid off, let's talk about the people that saw the writing on the wall before this made headline news. Those are the ones that have mastered the game. What is the game? To understand, to get ahead of the tidal wave coming. You hear the rumors. The rooms change. You were once invited to conversations that you're no longer being invited to. That's what we talk about inside my community. This is how you start to understand that the writing on the wall, nobody is giving you a pen. So let's talk about the ones, not the 14,000. Although I stand at an empathetic posture for them because I've been through two corporate layoffs, one completely unprepared. And by the time the second one came years later, my bridge was solid mentally. Now, there's some financial aspects, there's some readiness things, there's some life things, but mentally, I was solid. Those people were building exits while they were employed, or they just understood the assignment of their value, and they're building exits while they're employed. That's the winning side of this market. Unapologetically, I'm supporting organizations that support the entrepreneurship within their people, within their workforce, because they're going to do it anyway. Why not be an advocate for them, for your talent out loud? That's the stance I make, but that's a LinkedIn conversation. We'll leave that over there. Here, the conversation is about the group that made a decision before they became one of the 14,000 and they had a plan, not the ones asking what now. And if you are post corporate, this conversation still applies whether you are exploring another role in corporate or you are going down the lane that I am in, which is being a founder, entrepreneur, or CEO of your own thing. So why are we here? Why are we here? Because it's you're not confused. We see this. We understand that clarity is needed. But I can tell you, trying to find clarity when you're scrambling and being in a reactive and defensive stance is tough. I mean, I work with brilliant people. I mean, adversity is where the champions are born. But I'm saying, let's not willingly walk in that place. Do y'all agree? True leadership moving into this AI and navigating this AI disruptive, this information technology boom. True leaders understand that their people, they want more than good pay and benefits. They want autonomy. Let's go back on the side of the fence that I want to be here today and spend some time with you. Is that for those of you that are considering leaving or have left, that last job or your current role definitely is not a waste. I want you to look at it as a funding tank on what's next. Incubation period. It's interesting. I wrote Choice Destinations to go from corporate surviving to entrepreneurial thriving. I wrote that 3 years post my corporate layoff. And again, being laid off at peak performance year, that does something to your soul. You could choose to be bitter or you could choose to be better. And I'm here today to show you what better looks like. Because laid off, for those of you that can relate, at 43, that was 5 years ago, and I'm now in a doctoral program studying the ins and outs of strategic leadership. This isn't theory. It's my live work, and it's yours too. This is reality. And being on both sides of the table brings a certain perspective. Let's talk about the mask today. The corporate mask. Woo! I've seen some people when they unlearn and decide to no longer put on a costume, when they remove that corporate mask, it reveals so much. I mean, just think about it. Especially for my people that have navigated corporate America for a decade, 2 decades. Just think about what that unmasking looks like. So let me give you some signs you're still wearing it. I call it ASAP panic mode. It's that reply all reflex. You feel me? What about the Sunday night anxiety? I used to be I used to be anxious about taking vacation in my last leadership role. Not looking forward to looking forward to it, yes, because I got a chance to, but anxious because of the type of person I am. The anxiety I felt going into vacation while I was in corporate was due to what I knew I was coming back to. That's what the mask does to you. You're performing sometimes for years instead of building. There's a shift that needs to happen when and I encourage you all because my coaching, my consulting is all about being proactive. Now I do deal with, things happen out of our control. but my preference is to get ahead. But for those that have worn the mask for so long, it is subconsciously ingrained so deep. People forgot who they were without a title. They don't even know how to introduce themselves at a cocktail party. The stumbling, "Oh, so what do you do?" That question gives them a physical reaction because they can no longer say senior this, VP this, project this, I work for this. So the shift, you don't have to unlearn everything because I don't want to paint corporate as the enemy, but I'm not going to paint it as a friend either. Okay. I'm not going to paint it as a friend. You have to realign and think about what gets to stay and understand that is your choice. Because we start to shed what survival base look like. And I'm not talking about monetary survival. I'm talking about mental survival. The Sunday scaries. A lot of my clients don't realize how deep it goes until they're out of the sandbox. I'm gonna ask you, what corporate reflex are you still carrying that doesn't serve you anymore? When your calendar is empty, how do you feel if you are no longer in corporate? And that can be said, that can be flipped. The polar opposite is how do you feel when it's full? But I'm interested for those of you that are post corporate and have recently left. I think I was chatting with somebody here today that they hit their 1 year anniversary from Meta, from working at Meta, being laid off. And how do you feel with an empty calendar when your inbox is quiet? When you wake up in the morning and like, get what I'm saying? That's the mask, and the shift is to understanding there's some systems and some structures for those of you that are transitioning to entrepreneurship and are aspiring to do your own thing, build your own table. There's absolutely some lessons, some systems, some processes, some yeses that need to go with you. And they need to go with you to go with you because the structure required at an entrepreneurial level, where my entrepreneurs in the building? Where my people, if you know this, there's no applause. There's no benchmarks or performance reviews when you're a lone ranger building. You are the you are the IT desk help desk. You are customer experience. You are the CEO. But this isn't a gripe session because when you find the root of the purpose of what you're doing, when you understand the root of the purpose of what you're doing, oh man, the work becomes, it doesn't feel like work. I was on a mastermind call today and the lady said that you get to the fruit by addressing the root. So let's talk about, we just talked about the mask and corporate's not your enemy, but it probably is not your friend if you're looking to have some more autonomy, control, and just start designing some things on your own accord. Let's talk about the move, a strategic exit versus, I don't want to say desperate, but let's just say reactive. I'm a big offense. I'm not a football person. I am married to a coach. Let's get on offense for my guys that, well, let me not say that because it's a lot of ladies that love football, but let's get into some offense. Let's talk about the corporate currency side. What actually translates? And one thing that stuck out to me when I was in the comments was regarding corporate currency is the transferability of it and the freedom to, they can take the role, the title, but they can't take your corporate currency. And when you can translate that, and for those of you in my community, positioning, I'm all about it. When you can translate and quantify things and bring that to the table of entrepreneurship, OMG. So what does that look like? What is being strategic? And I'll talk about how to do this while you are, if for those of you that are still employed, I'm gonna tell you how to do it because a lot of people, they meet me in my DMs. First of all, I'm an exit strategist and I'm on LinkedIn. You can't exactly say on LinkedIn, hey, I need your support. I'm ready to leave this company when half of your colleagues are on LinkedIn. So my DMs be popping. My DMs be popping because there's a discretion. However, my consultancy work is showing organizations that it's better for the organization to expect people to leave and encourage them because you get the best work when you support people and their life path, not just what they do for you in that season, but when you support people and their big picture. I promise to my organizational leaders, you get the best work. And they become your rock stars, your alumni. Again, that's a LinkedIn conversation. I'll leave it there. But for those of us are the lone rangers here at the crossroads, you got to quantify. You got to know how to speak to what you do, right? Speak to what you do, not what you've done. How do you actually translate that? Well, you quantify the technical. What does that look like? for my data analyst, reducing processing time by 40%. Is, oh, I'm a data analyst. No, no, I reduced processing time by 40%, saving the company XYD dollars and leading this project. You got to get granular on how you start speaking because, for one, you never know who's in the room. I have closed contracts from my YouTube videos, from my DMs. You never know who's in the room and you never know who knows who. I have received inquiries to be interviewed at major US magazines just from somebody reading something that they felt was insightful, but not some things. Some things. The gingerbread woman. I was dropping crumbs. Consistency. It's in the unsexy where the success lives. When you translate that corporate currency, let's talk about strategic exit versus a reactive exit. You show the impact. Name the hidden skill. And let me tell you, let me not overcomplicate this. What in your role that people come to you for all the time? And then you could be work from home, remote, hybrid. What is that one thing that you were getting pinged on? That's a good rabbit hole to go down. For me, I increased my salary in 3 years by 177% at my last corporate role. And I had an exit when I went into a role that I knew I was overqualified for. I was middle aged with high school, middle school children, and most of my colleagues in that particular space at the beginning of that tenure were fresh out of college. What do you think my advantage was? Oh, yeah. What made me stood out or stand out is how I've received 2 promotions, increased my salary by 177%, and received a paid location to the city that I had always wanted to go. Yeah, professional maturity, and I leaned into it because I understood it was bigger than the numbers on the paper. I understood what showing up really looked like, and I knew who moved the needles. Hey, if I see them in the hallway, I'm calling them by their first, "How you doing?" I'm calling them by their first name. Let me tell you, the game is to be played. How many times have you seen somebody get promoted and you know there were 10 other people more qualified than them? I kn Somebody in this chat has to give me an emoji or react. How many times have you seen an associate colleague get promoted when you know there were 10 other people more capable? I'll wait. I will wait because I'm guessing a lot of you have seen that it's a game to be played. I don't have it here, but I'll try to drop the link. It's a book. And I passed it to my daughter when she received her undergraduate on the game, the way to get promoted. And it's not about the metrics. It's not about the performance view. That might be 20, 30%. It's the game. So we talked about the math. We talked about the movement. Let's get to the fundamentals of the bridge product for those that have to move discreetly while they are still working. Now, it's all in the language. Your current job, whether you like it or it's okay, or you just want to do something different, I need you to look at it as a container, a strategy lab. You build your next move inside the current one. So you start with what are the pain points at your current organization? Then you start matching it with your curiosity. And then you start pitching a solution. Now, some of this is not going to be necessarily compensatable, and it's going to require some time. But if you want to know how to get you some advocates on your team, this is how you do it. You get ahead of it, and then you track the results. Document what you're doing so you can speak to that with the name. Now, you may not be on an official company itinerary, but when you can speak to the solution, whether you're there or it's in your rear view, OMG, because it's verifiable. This is how you get advocates. This is how you get because not only are you moving, other people are moving. So you never know. You might have a colleague go to a company or work on a project or start their own thing, and they have recognized that you have a certain talent. And before you know it, you are being part of a startup that is on its way. It's happening. You can look at the PayPal squad. Don't quote me on this, but I mean, Jack Dorsey, Elon Musk, they cohort of people. Look what they went off and did on their own. You think it's not a who you know game? It absolutely is. And in this virtual world, it's easier for you to have those touch points. Let me know if this is helping somebody today. Let me know if this is resonating, if this is landing today. So we talked about the mass, the move. Now we're talking about how you either fly under the radar, depending on the type of organization you are working in, because everybody doesn't need to know everything. And I talk about that in my book, Choice Destinations. You do have to keep some things close to chest. You do have to be a little bit discreet in some things because Let's be real, everybody's not a cheerleader. There's some things post-worthy and there's some things that are not. When it comes to networking, that's a great point for my next great segue for my next point. You network for the intel, not just the access. Now, I'm not talking about being sneaky. No, I believe in the law of reciprocity. If you're seeking value, you should be giving value, but no more just checking in emails. Make things stick. Remember things people tell you. Be curious. Ask people sincerely about their challenges, growths, and pivots, because what that will do, especially if this is somebody already in a place that you desire to be, it'll save you time, money, and headache. Because if you can understand the challenge before you're even presented with it, you have a bird's eye view. That is leverage. Leverage, my beautiful people. And I talked about being discreet, but I do want to talk about sharing some updates because it gives you, one, a level of accountability, and it gives you just a little bit of a dopamine hit. A lot of people say, "Oh, you shouldn't share it until you." No, I like a little dopamine on the side of my espresso. Let's be real. Who doesn't like a pat on the back? And you let people witness your evolution in real time because you were inspired. So back to the law of reciprocity, be the inspirer. And then I want to end on this section here about being strategic versus defensive, desperate. We want to get in a proactive stance. Is craft your story. Tell your story. Don't let anybody write it for you. Where you've been, what lights you up, and where you're going. Where you've been, what lit you up along the journey, and where are you going? Because once you start to connect those three pieces of your story, it filters out the noise. Y'all with me? If you can craft your foundation, where you've been, your origin story. For me, service professional entrepreneur for 20 years, raising children, going through all the life stages that young mothers do, married, divorced, married, going back to school, entering corporate with a wealth of entrepreneurial knowledge that allowed me to advance in corporate at a hyper rate speed, and then boomeranging back to entrepreneurship. Oh yeah, I'm coming with it. Nobody can tell my story better than me. And you shouldn't let anybody tell yours. When you're on LinkedIn or Substack, put it in the bio, not necessarily where you've been. Talk about where you're going. Talk about where you're going. Let me do up. Y'all with me? So here, the money. Let's talk about the funding the transition without blowing it up. Because I stated earlier, for those of you that joined me live, that it's impossible. There's a book, Power versus Force. If you have not read that book, I recommend you understand that book because it takes you to levels of feelings where you can't get to the next level if you haven't dealt with the stuff. And I'm paraphrasing it. That author was brilliant. Power versus force. If shelter and food and things of that are, there's no way you can't be in a visionary stance. I'm sorry, you got to deal with the basics. If you're raising children and going through, relationships and going through life, it gets difficult, right? Funding the change in your life without blowing up your life. And most of the fear that the other people I work with is I can't afford to leave yet. They feel like they got to have a stock portfolio, 1.5 million in a high yield savings account. And in my workbook, The Beautiful Exit, I talk about, look, it's not going to be a perfect time. You got 6 to 12 months. I'm telling you, you top 5% of America right now. While most American households can't afford a $500 emergency without using a credit card. Can I get a witness? Can I get a witness? Funding the transition without blowing up your life. This is where bridge projects come into play because you don't have to leap. You need a runway. I tell people I'm not advocating against corporate, but I am advocating that we widen the highway. You can have multiple things going on outside of a corporate role. Some of the smartest bridges ideas are consulting your current expertise. Now, if you're not locked into a non-compete or things of that nature, fractional leadership roles, I have a caveat on that though. So stay with me. Consulting your expertise, just paid bridge projects. I don't like the term side hustle because God didn't design me. He didn't design my creativity to be a side dish. I'm a main course lady. So consulting your expertise is a great segue for corporate professionals. But let me talk to you about fractional roles because I'm starting to see a trend in a lot of corporate professionals exploring fractional. Understand the roots of fractional. Fractional is on-demand fires, put out the fire type of roles. Now, when I work with my clients, I said, what type of life do you want to live? And personally, the life that I don't want to live is having my phone by me, having clients call me at 5 a.m. and 6 a.m. on a Sunday morning. That is a lot of the times, if it is not contracted well, the life of a fractional leadership role. I wanted to set the caveat. Yes, you can start to position yourself as a fractional leader, but keep in mind and understand that how you set that stage, you have to perform it. And what you will end up doing is leaving one headache for a bigger headache. And without the systems and the cushion that corporate gave you, there's a way you set that up. But when it comes to smart bridge income, I believe consulting is a high level way and a smooth way to do that. Now, let me talk about passion projects, side hustles. Verifiably case study back. Absolutely, you do what you love. Now I'm putting on my teaching hat. The idea of a bridge transition is to have enough data to understand if the market will pay you handsomely. No kibbles and bits. You got too much experience because we just talked about a few minutes ago. You're speaking to results, not theory. We want to get paid for all of the years and the sweat equity that we put in. Be careful with passion projects because a lot of people say, well, I don't want to do, I'm sick of it. Well, you might be sick of it in the capacity that you're doing it. But if you package it up to something where if you know it, if you already know it and you can package it up and speak to it, and the market has already verified that people are seeking what you have been trained to do. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. So career sweet spot for me when it comes to building your bridge project, which is your transition out of corporate, is pursue something that lights you up. Absolutely. Use your corporate currency. That's your skills, expertise, and background. Don't discredit that just because the container it's sitting in is not a right fit. Don't forget you still have the bills. But the third caveat with corporate currency, is it a passion? Do you like it? Is will you get paid for it? And that's where I come in within my community. I coach people how to position that to where the market responds and make sure that you're putting out the right message to attract the right buyer. That's a different conversation for another day. Final takeaway, appreciate you all tapping in. You don't need a new title. And everybody knows the buzzword of the consulting world is clarity. It's a buzzword for a reason because it's the truth. A vague vision, there's no victory in that. A vague vision, there's no victory in that. We want to move from proof, from a position of power, not panic. I started off this live talking about 14,000 people have just been laid off at Amazon this month. In the last 3 months, it's been 30,000. But the headline will never talk about the ones that saw the writing on the wall and created a strategic exit plan. No victory in vague visions. Let's go. I'm going to close out. I do want to say for those of you interested in going deeper, I'm here on Substack with you. I do have a community coaching via CAPE, which is career advancement, positioning, experience, because you can't be the best kept secret. That's not what's going to get you paid. And there's people that are terrified of being visible, but that's part of the mask coming off. For those of you that have been with me the whole life, that's part of your mask coming off, the unlearning. Because being human, you're going to make mistakes and you're going to fail forward. We got to change the narrative. For those of you ready to stop guessing and start moving with that clarity, hey, my DMs are open. Send me a DM. I'll personally share the link to apply to work with me. But thank you all for joining. We are building power moves with purpose. I hope this was helpful for you all. I'll see you on the Substack feed. You all take care.